real wrestling or a real takedown situation in a very controlled, low-risk way. I love that kind of training now because, you can't count on two random guys to be civil. All right, set on your feet. You have no clue what the hell they're going to do. It's assumed, based on social norms of grappling, that they're not going to try to spike each other on their head. But you're assuming, and these two guys, you don't know them. One guy might be like a blue belt. One guy might have wrestled in high school or college. You just don't know.
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's also a 6th degree red and white belt in Judo. He's an accomplished high school and NCAA wrestler. He was a 2-time All-State wrestler and a Beijing Olympic Trials qualifier. He's also a 2-time national judo champion and a 2-time world team member and a 3-time World Cup medalist. He was a Sambo Pan Am's champion, a Sambo World Team member, and he's now the head instructor at Kokushi Budo Institute in Manhattan, and he also teaches once a week at Essential Jiu-Jitsu. He's also got a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in education, and he was a former professor at Brooklyn College, Barnard. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined for the 3rd time on the podcast today by Shintaro Higashi. How are you today, Shintaro?
I'm doing great, man. And an MBA from NYU. I'm gonna throw that in there.
And an MBA from NYU. Yeah. I forgot to mention that. Well, I'm sorry. You're an educated man, dude. It's actually both on the academic side and on the judo side and
the
jiu-jitsu.
Asian side of me, the Asian side.
I appreciate you being back, man. It's great. I think the last interview we did was about a year ago, so I'm stoked to catch up with you here today. What have you been up to in the last year?
Well, just same old training and working out and working on a few projects for myself, whether it's like more jiu-jitsu instructionals, judo instructionals, working on Higashi brand. We have gi pants, gi shorts, all sorts of cool stuff. So, doing that, being a dad, that's it.
Tell me about the gi shorts and the gi pants, because you were telling me about this. They have pockets. It's like casual wear.
It's a casual wear. So, we have 3 colors, black, navy, and gray, and they have pockets, right? Zippered pockets. And we have a back patch pocket. So it's got the drawstring and everything. It feels like gi pants, but it doesn't look that much like gi pants. So it's not like egregious. You're not going to the Whole Foods picking out avocado and people are like, oh, that guy does martial arts or karate. It's not like that. It's subtle. But if you're in the game, you're like, oh, wow, that is the guy who does jiu-jitsu or judo, without a doubt. But it looks like everyday casual wear, and it's amazing. You guys got to check it out. HigashiBrand.com.
What sparked that idea? How'd you come up with that?
Actually, like 10 years ago, we did a collaboration with Fuji, and I just love gi pants. You like gi pants?
I do.
Maybe you don't do it. Do you do no-gi or gi?
I do. I do everything. I do jiu-jitsu,
everything, right?
man.
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. So you're like me, and then you have your favorite gi pants that you go to, right? They're super comfortable. You want to wear them every day, but they don't have pockets. It's a problem. And zipper pockets are even better because when you're wearing sweatpants or athletic wear, the phone always falls out, the wallet falls out. So, that's where I got the idea. Not like the most brilliant idea, but, it's definitely something that scratches an itch for most of us grapplers. You know what I mean? And it's comfortable, all that. So
is it like ripstop material, or what's is it just the same? Is basically the exact same material you would find in modern gi pants anywhere, or is it something you had something special?
There's a lot of blends that they use for the gi pants. This one's mostly cotton, so it's like a majority cotton. We call it PVC with like a little bit of polyester and things like this. The different cuts and the different products have like slightly different blends, but they're majority cotton. They're super soft, so it's awesome. It's not like the one with very, very stiff pant. It's much more softer and relaxed for, everyday wear.
I'm definitely going to check it out once we get off the phone here. That's a really cool idea. You mentioned fatherhood is something. How old's your, do you have a boy or a girl now?
Girl, my daughter's 6 now. It's crazy.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
She wrapped up kindergarten. Yeah, she's going to start, 1st grade in the fall, and she's at a summer camp right now. She's loving it, taking her to the pool every day. It's just a great time, man. Great time, great age. So I'm loving that. You have a kid?
I have 2 now. Yeah. I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Yeah.
That's right. Because the 6, 4, 2. Yeah, you were a few years behind. So
yes, I
think I remember last time I was like, you were like, oh, I have a 3-year-old. I was like, oh, that's a great age. It really is, because they're so aware.
It's so much fun now, and now they're kind of
Yeah.
getting to the point now where I can start introducing them to stuff from my childhood. So it's all like Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
Power Rangers, you know, X-Men, all that kind of stuff. So
Oh, it's
they're
the
like
best, man.
really absorbing all that. So
My kid fished out some pogs in the attic the other day. I don't know how old you are. You're
no,
35
I'm
or
39. I totally remember
oh, we're the
Pogs.
same
Yeah,
exact age. We're the same
yeah,
exact age. So
yeah,
she fished them out. I'm like, where the hell did you get that? And she's like playing with the pogs. They got the slammers, and I'm like, man, I cannot
yeah,
believe. I was like, this is how you play.
yeah.
You know, I'm smoking her. You know,
That's amazing. I wish so bad I had my Pogs still. Those have been gone probably since 97 or 98. Those probably got
man, I
sent to
couldn't
Goodwill or
believe I
something.
found just a little tiny case of him. I don't know how it remained there for 30 something years, but yeah, amazing.
There was always that one kid too that had those really thick like bronze or metal slammers that
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they
yeah,
throw it down, the
yeah.
whole thing would just fly. They'd take
Bang.
everyone's
Yeah,
Pogs.
yeah.
Yeah, I think they eventually came up with, it's like, okay, look, you have to use the thick plastic one. You can't come up in here with like a, you know, steel magnetic
Yeah, that's
slammer to
right.
use,
You remember
stealing
those super
everybody's
thick
stuff.
ones too? Remember that one with like half rubber? It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And they had
Kids,
like
no one
they had
knows
like
what
the
we're talking about
grooves.
now.
No, no, these kids have no clue. They have no. You have to be.
Nah.
You have to be a master's division to know what we're talking
Yeah.
about here. But
At least that
that's
masters too.
masters too, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, man, Shintaro, you know, something obviously that is hot right now in jiu-jitsu and grappling in general is takedown knowledge. It's really in
Yeah.
demand, and it's more than ever, it feels like, because no-gi grappling is really on the rise with the ADCC Opens and all the
Yeah.
exciting developments that are happening in the world of no-gi competition. Many students are seeking knowledge through wrestling and through judo. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, judo transfers really easily to gi jiu-jitsu, but it can also be used, you
100%.
know, in no-gi really well
Yeah.
also. What are your thoughts on applying judo concepts and techniques in a no-gi setting?
So I think there's a little bit more of a leap, right? For wrestling to BJJ, there's a very small leap. If you're doing wrestling to No-Gi Jiu-Jitsu, watch out for guillotine, watch out for udegarami, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Don't shoot with your head down. Don't take such a low stance. Very much more easier kind of transition. So I think there's sort of this intermediary place where you have to kind of explore the rules and look at the advantages and what judo provides and what no-gi judo can potentially be. So it's like sort of this intermediate ground, right? Because judo is generally played with a gi. So how does it apply in the context of without a gi, and how does it apply to submission wrestling? So it's a very unique place. There's no organization that like runs this and takes a deep dive into it. So it really is everyone's best guess. Thought leaders of the judo world who kind of have their foot in jujitsu, those guys are the ones kind of talking about the ideas, moving the thing forward, and then saying, hey, this is what no-gi judo is, right? So I think it's a very unique field. It's kind of new and very, very exciting time to be in grappling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, it's interesting. Like historically, we have had some examples of people who have used judo really well
Yeah,
without gis.
yeah,
Ronda Rousey in the UFC, Cairo Parisian
yeah,
before her.
for
There's
sure.
several. Yeah, there's several others. So I guess we
Yeah,
do have like a kind of a like the empirical evidence of it working well in an ogi
yeah.
situation. But I think that, like you said, a lot of people when they think judo, they think, man, how do you make that work without the lapels, without the sleeves? So what are some of the big like since there isn't a gi to grab, like obviously
Yeah.
understanding like anchor points would obviously be something
Yeah.
important to understand. What grips do you think are most important to build into your muscle memory as a no-gi player?
So I just did a video about this for the BJJ Fanatics group, and you know it's going to be two instructionals: no-gi judo throws and no-gi judo trips and sweeps, right? And one of the majority of the things that I talk about is forming closed loops to anchor onto your opponent's upper body. And you know that's S grip, you know, gable grip, et cetera. But locking up the body, locking around head and arm, and then being able to use those positions to throw the person. And what kind of technical stuff like strategical things, whether it's misdirections or creating movement and creating angles. So there's sort of like a very old like wrestling sort of mentality there, and there's a lot of transfer over. But there's a couple of big differences, right? Because like in wrestling, it's primarily taking that drop step. But when you're in this upright position, there's no longer a need to take that sort of drop step if the person is much more upright. So coming in there, working the underhooks, the overhooks, et cetera, and having good head position, and then trying to look for these closed loops are much more sticky, right? And that's kind of the stuff I think that's people are really exploring nowadays. And you know that's the key to really learning judo in a no-gi setting because the collar tie on the wrist, that's so not sticky. It slips so easily. You know, 3 minutes into a roll, you're sweaty. It's completely gone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So even the range is a little bit different. Like for instance, like you can have like an arm's length distance and you can be attached to your opponent because the gi creates that closed loop. But in no-gi judo, you have to be chest to chest almost to be able to use a lot of this stuff, unless it's a off the bat attack, clubbing the head and going for an osoto, things like this that don't have too much follow up, right? It's like a one shot ripping motion, direct attack, or locking in and then setting things up and incrementally going. It's kind of the difference between like an outside fast pass system and like a sort of a pressure pass inside, sort of like a headquarters passing kind of an idea, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. Yeah. A lot of things we've seen MMA fighters who use judo well is a lot of, they emphasize really strongly on the overhook. There's lots of overhooks for hitting uchimatas and things like that. What are your thoughts on that? Is that another like a crucial position to understand if you're going to apply jiu-jitsu and no-gi? Or if you're going to apply judo and no-gi?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, like we talked about creating a closed loop around an upper body position, right? If you have that overhook tight, right? And we're not talking about like a bad overhook where the other person's kind of jacking our arm up. Controlling the space in the shoulder joint is the key, right? If you have the underhook and you're able to elevate and the person has their arm separated from their body and you have good position to separate the arm and isolate it away from their head, now all of a sudden your arm is much weaker. So when the person has a not so good underhook and then you're able to clamp down and form a closed loop around that shoulder, now that upper body is stuck to you. So now once you have that position, you could attack the lower body, use your body to shift the opponent's body weight, and then sort of attack the vulnerabilities that may show up. And these are the kind of things that are really kind of important to kind of go for. And even with the wrist grip, right? So if you go overhook and wrist, majority of the time when you're doing judo, hey, pull the sleeve out front like this. But when you're grabbing the wrist, man, you're not going to be able to pull the hand out because, first of all, your delt's not so strong. Second of all, your grip is very exposed, right? With the connection to the finger and the wrist, that's where the majority of the wrist becomes. And when they turn, it's going to be very difficult, right? So off balance or kazushi isn't caused by me bringing the hand forward anymore because we're not attached by the gi. So a lot of the times, like controlling that wrist and pinning that wrist to your hip. So now you're actually sticking that hand to the hip, and now all of a sudden they can't retract their arm, and then using your body weight to off balance forward and then attacking the legs. Things like this are like the small minor nuances that make a lot of these throws, I think, work in a no-gi setting that's very, very underemphasized. And you see these things kind of inadvertently hit. You know, these guys are great athletes in the MMA cage. So these guys are already kind of naturally, intuitively doing these things, right? Because they realize, oh, I can't just pull the arm out like this. So I think that sort of thing needs to be explicitly taught. And it'll put a lot more eyeballs on no-gi judo once people start understanding sort of like the basics and the fundamentals of how to transition the judo game to a no-gi setting.
You know, Shintaro, I think one thing that a lot of jiu-jitsu students struggle with is that, and of course, the caveat to what I'm about to say here, it depends on where you come from. It depends on what school you're in. I know a lot of people have coaches that have extensive wrestling or judo black belts, you know, but for a lot of people, the takedowns and the standing aspect of the game that they learn is just this hodgepodge of like different random techniques from wrestling and judo that are kind of thrown in there. What you described of learning how to switch grips and react to different things that people are trying to do on the feet, what do you think is the best way to develop that? What's the best way to learn how to hand fight properly, learn how to use the proper responses to frames and grips that people do if you come from a school that doesn't have a really solid foundational takedown curriculum?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is playing in a low risk setting where if you make a mistake, you're not getting punished. Oh my God, I'm going to go for this throw. If I slip, the guy's going to suplex me on my head. Now all of a sudden, you're not going to go for that throw anymore. Hey, if I lock up closed loop around the head and arm, and now all of a sudden they wrap their arms around my body waist, and then they dive me backwards, and then I break my leg, it's too much risk. It's very scary. So taking those risk factors out and then reducing the intensity makes it a sort of a safe environment. You ever been in like school and you have like you think you know the answer, but you like didn't really do your homework, and then if you say something, everyone's gonna laugh at you. Oh, this guy's stupid, right? And you can't really get involved, and now all of a sudden you're like daydreaming. You know what I mean? But like you kind of have your thoughts, you can say it, you trust everyone. Everyone's not gonna call you a retard, right? Now you're in a safe environment where you could explore all these ideas and talk about them, and then you learn, right? It's very similar, I think, in jiu-jitsu and judo. You have to have an environment where you're not going to get spiked on your head. And in the beginning, when you're learning, majority of your training should be non-competitive, where it's like, hey, if we're doing this gripping thing, me and you, we're going to go upper body and we're looking for position. We're going to look for inside trips, but we're not going to finish any of the throws. and we're going to trade wins. You win, I win. You win, I win. So now we're not competing for position anymore, right? Because no matter what, you're going to be competitive. If these things are not explicitly said, you're going to be competing for stuff. And, we both have a little bit of an ego, right? Because we do grappling and martial arts. And all of a sudden I'm trying something and you trip me to my back. Oh my God, Shintaro just got taken to his back. No, I was trying something new. Like, no, like, and he's like, oh my God, Ryan slammed him. But it's like, all right, we're just going to trade positions back and forth and we're going to kind of explore this feeling. If I go here, I get a risk of that. It's fine. And kind of having this back and forth. I think that's the number one thing. And Russians train like this in judo and wrestling. They've been forever, forever. So it's just like the Russian method. But they train 6-7 hours a day, not super high intensity. They train like this. They get over under chest to chest, looking for drops, lat drops, knee levers, et cetera, upper body wrestling, digging for double overhooks, underhooks, trying body locks. They'll do that for 3 hours straight. No one's getting spiked on their head. And then they do a little live at the end. They have a dedicated day where they just kind of go hard. I don't know how it is now. I assume it's the same, but that's a great method of learning.
I could really see that being very beneficial, where if you have a partner and the objective is simply just to get to the proper positioning. And then the taking turns idea is a really good thing too, because as you're learning, as you're trying to learn, it would be very stifling if the person's just consistently shutting you down 100%. If you're giving each other 100% resistance, it doesn't seem like you're going to get much repetition that way. No. At what point after doing that for a while do you think it's appropriate to turn the intensity up, maybe add a little bit more resistance?
I mean, it depends on the person and like the training environment. Really, like, do they know how to fall, all this stuff? But I think after about a week or so, if you do it every other day, 3 or 4 training sessions where you're spending 20, 30 minutes in the position, now you have time in position. You know what I mean? Like when I was trying to learn deep half or something like that, how often was I encountering deep half? Not that often, right? Maybe once every 3 or 4 rolls, maybe if there's guys in the room that did it. And, essentially, there's not too many guys who play deep half. So it's like maybe once a week, one roll a week, I may be in that position for maybe 40 seconds at best. Like, how am I going to get better at this?
Yeah,
I'm not. As opposed to like, all right, we're going to start. You're in deep half, your turn. I'm in deep half, my turn. So when I'm on bottom, I'm looking for certain things. And when I'm on top, I'm like, oh, this guy's looking for these things. Right. So now you kind of like go on both sides and understand both sides and understand the objectives from both positions. And now all of a sudden, you're learning in a way where it's not like defending deep half or doing deep half. Those things kind of have this complementary thing when you're learning both sides of the coin simultaneously. And you're going at an intensity where you're kind of given these small problems where you kind of problem solve consciously. Oh, he's looking for this. Oh, he's looking to underhook the thing. Oh, he's hiding that arm. What's he going to go for? Oh, he's trying to tilt the hips and then switch back to create momentum, right? And then you kind of stay ahead of it consciously. You could literally have a conversation with yourself. All right, he's going to try to way to sweep me now, right? Grab that arm and grab that arm, So like, I think once you do that repetitively, almost a few sessions a day, now all of a sudden when you get there, you're like, it's familiar. It's familiar territory. You know what I mean?
That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the idea about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's precisely why specific training, like you're describing, has become at the so much at the forefront of a lot of academies around the world. It's so important to be able to hyper focus on those positions because, like you said, if you're, especially like on the feet, like there's a lot of schools that don't even start from the feet at all. Like they always start from the knees. So at what point then in any training session are they going to get the opportunity to explore these concepts we're talking about on the feet? So you got to make the time. You got to find a partner and make the time for sure.
And these drills are really important. Like just going back to that thing, like high backhand in tennis. How often do you see that in a game of tennis? 5 times, 6 times, and you miss it every time. But all of a sudden, your coach is like, "All right, I'm going to hit it to your weak high backhand side. We're going to do it 1,000 times. Now you have 1,000 times exposure. If you're doing it 5 times, you've seen that shot 5 times in a training session. In order to get 1,000 shots of that, you're going to have to put in 200 training sessions over the course of how many years?" And your mind is not always on that shot. And then all of a sudden, I suck at this thing. Now I'm going to avoid it. I hope he doesn't shoot it over here. And then 3 years goes by and you still haven't had any dedicated focused training. That's deliberate training, and they write about this stuff in research studies and things like this. Very beneficial, So Yeah, and then the same example you were talking about in jiu-jitsu school, it's like, all right, we're going to start standing, but you kind of have to put safeguards in. You're going to start standing. There's A man, B man, A woman, B woman, whatever, whoever you are, right? So person A is going to hand fight and take the person B down, and then it goes live, right? And then once the submission happens, once the whatever happens, all right, we go back, start on the feet. Person B is going to take the person down, but you're not going to let them take him down right away. You're going to post, hand fight a little bit. You're going to put up a little bit of a fight, but you're going to get taken down. So you're trading wins. So now start on your feet. Ryan's going to spear double me. You know what I mean? There's no risk of that. You're not going to spear double me, right? We know that you're going to take me down. So I'm just kind of giving you little feelers of problem, pulsing on your head, grabbing your wrist, and you're kind of stripping the wrist, moving the head a little bit, creating angles. And you take a shitty shot. I'm going to be like, nope. But take a good shot. You got me. Bang. Now we're doing jiu-jitsu on the ground, and we've had exposure of something that simulates real wrestling or a real takedown situation in a very controlled, low risk way. And that's like, I love that kind of training now because, you can't count on two random guys to be civil. All right, set on your feet. You have no clue what the hell they're going to do. It's assumed based on social norms of grappling that they're not going to try to spike each other on their head, but you're assuming. And these two guys, you don't know them. One guy might be like a blue belt. One guy might have wrestled in high school or college. You just don't know, you know? So I really like this kind of format for takedowns because the risk is a lot higher. If it's straight jiu-jitsu, oh, I made a mistake, you passed my guard. Big deal, right? But if it's an Osoto to the side of the knee, you're out. Your leg's broken.
Shintaro, your answer is causing me to make a detour here in the conversation because I was going on one. We're going to come back to the trajectory I was on, but I want to take a quick detour here. What are your thoughts and what advice would you give to a student out there who's listening who doesn't train the way that you're just describing, where they find themselves in a constant competitive mindset for every class, and they have a hard time maybe relinquishing techniques or allowing the other person to do something in the kind of way that you're describing? What advice would you give them to correct that? Because it seems like what you're describing is so beneficial for development and learning, and there are some people that just have that mental block where it's like they just are constantly in a competitive mode and can't seem to relinquish that.
It's tough to say, right? Exactly, how to kind of break that pattern. And, everyone's a young guy at some point, and me at 22, haven't had any serious injuries yet. Why would I think that I would get injured? I'm stronger than I've ever been. I'm fast. I'm athletic. I'm not going to get injured. This guy shouldn't get injured too. He's my age. He's in good shape. Like, why would he get injured? And then it's like, oh, this guy can't take me down. And has an ego thing. You just kind of can't overcome it. But hearing your teachers, if you're in a culture where learning is sort of the priority, skill development is the number one thing, and you kind of have these drills kind of embedded in the culture of the gym, and the teacher is able to communicate it like, this is why we train like this. And then when those people single the guy who's going crazy out and say, hey, listen, man, you're not going to get better by doing this. And you may think that you're not going to get injured, but one day you're going to get injured. It happens to many, many people. And sometimes, you just got to hold them down and like hurt them a little bit too. Because, like kind of give them a little bit of their own medicine. It's like, and then the gas tank stuff, I'm not in shape, therefore I'm going to go running. No, it really does come down to you just being inefficient use of your gas tank, right? You have no efficiency in your movement. You're spazzing out like crazy. You're a risk to yourself. You're not out of shape. You don't need to run. You need to do more judo and jiu-jitsu in a safe way. You got to develop skill. And the stuff that you think is working doesn't really work. It's dog shit because it's only working on guys who you can outmaneuver because you're more athletic, guys who are weaker than you, and you're relying on physicality and then trying to get them to kind of separate skill and physicality. And physicality works, always to a certain extent. You know what I mean? So then you get it from the guy who's higher above, who's bigger, stronger, faster, and more skilled. That's when I think things kind of start clicking for these guys. And, take it from me, who's been in grappling for, almost 35 years. It really has got to be the new thing. And, jiu-jitsu's going in that direction too, the ecological approach. As the main demographic of jiu-jitsu practitioners enter into their mid to late 40s now, 30s and 40s, right? 5-10 years ago, it was like, oh, the average jiu-jitsu guy is like 33 years old. Now it's getting older, you know? So like when that happens, and I think everybody's going to kind of go in this direction. More people do it, the more it has to be safer. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I even answered your question at all there,
No,
but
you totally did, man. I mean, it really seems like the sweet spot for skill development is when you're able to experiment with things,
yeah,
leave your comfort zone a little bit, and have fun, and just kind
yeah,
of be relaxed and not,
yeah,
not be so win all the time in your mind. You have
yeah,
to be able to kind of put yourself in positions that are not your strong point, and yeah, for some people out there listening, I know that is something people run into is they kind
yeah,
of have this mindset where it's like, well, I only want to play my A game all the time. I want to keep
yeah,
developing these skills I'm good at. It's like, well, man,
yeah, yeah.
if you don't step out, you're not going to grow much,
It's
So
very true. And if you're a competitor, it's different. You have 2 weeks
yeah,
till comp. You want to increase the intensity to get used to that intensity because people are going to be in your face going nuts, spazzing out. So if you're just kind of flow rolling all the time and chilling all the time, you're going to get there and guys are going to club you in the head and be like, whoa, and you're going to be overwhelmed. So eventually you're going to have to like crest it up and peak. Maybe you spend one day a week and saying like, hey, this week, one day, when I feel great, I'm going to go hard and I'm going to try to win every roll. And that's something that you can do a small percentage of the time. But majority of the time, it's got to be, hey, this is my theme of the week. It's skill development. It's doing this, working on these things, and filling in your gaps in your knowledge. You know?
now to veer things back towards judo for
Yeah,
jujitsu. One question I had for you. You mentioned that the upright stance that we commonly see judo players
yeah,
use. So what are your thoughts on defensive measures from that stance? Because I think a lot of people, when they think of sitting up high and standing high, they think, man,
yeah,
aren't I kind of exposing myself for double legs and like a wrestler
yeah.
style guy to shoot in? What do you think are the best defensive measures to have if you're going to take that kind of stance?
Honestly, I think like guillotine's a huge one. That's why you don't see a very low stance in MMA. MMA, well, because you get kicked in the face, right? And then the rule states dictate kind of what kind of matches look like. So if you're taking a very deep wrestling stance, you could get kicked in the face in MMA. So those guys tend to take a little bit more of a posture, like upright posture, really upright, because they're swinging for the fences, they're kicking to the head, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, no-gi jiu-jitsu, no one's kicking to the head. But if your head is much lower than the opponent, it's very easy to get snapped down into a front headlock position. And in wrestling, it's not good either because you can get neck cranked and then taken over for back exposure, or you can get taken down from front headlock, but there's a good control position, right? If it's collegiate wrestling, they'll go behind. But the risk for BJJ guy is added on top of those two things. There's a guillotine risk. So naturally, people tend to favor a much higher position, and mirroring the opponent's head height is kind of the key. And now because of the way judo has evolved with the IJF and the Olympics, there's no leg grabs. So the new generation of judokas really don't have any good wrestling takedown defenses, which is a huge gap when you're talking about in their knowledge when it comes to like, sort of the martial side of things. You know what I mean? But I think like learning a proper guillotine and things like that can really mitigate. Like there's guys in the gym that have a really, really good front headlock choke, guillotine choke that I would just never shoot a double on, you know? And there's ways to shoot double with your head to the outside of the arm, from like chest to chest over under positions that are phenomenal. And you see guys like Justin Flores hit it all the time. And, he's, judo wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy, right? He's D1 wrestler, high level judo, BJJ black belt, and those are the kind of double leg takedowns that you want to be shooting. I'm not too worried about the guy that's going to shoot a high C or a double, right? Because if you're ready for it, you can kind of, have something special for them coming in.
Now, for the guy that does apply a shot well and
Yeah.
is able to get to your hips, what is usually your go-to response as far as a throw would go? Like, are you looking for
Yeah.
uchimatas? What are you typically responding with?
So it depends how I could connect my hand around the head. And if you could connect in front headlock position, I used to do harai or osotogari off of that front headlock all the time, which was very unique back in the day. And, it's not specific to me, but it was not one of the things that most people would go for. So that caught a lot of people by surprise. Once I'm like kind of upright and then they shoot down below the head and the arms and they get into the hips are the third line of defense. They always say arms, head, hips. Those are the three lines of defenses for wrestling. Arms first. If you beat the arms, it's your head defense. Then it's the hips. So once they're shooting in, you want to hip bump them forward, right? To kind of counter they're coming forward. And now from that position, you could angle off and snap and then kind of create an angle to go for the front headlock. So as you're doing that, as they're following, you want to connect the hand on the chin, hike it up, and then go for an outside trip, which is like one of the things that I really, really like to do. Sometimes the inside trip's a little bit more difficult. Everyone kind of sees it coming, but I guarantee the outside trip, that's something that not a lot of jiu-jitsu guys have done yet. And if we're talking strictly no-gi jiu-jitsu, people are going to start hitting that.
That kind of takes us into a different topic that I think is interesting to cover. Creativity when using takedowns and creativity on the feet. Obviously, something that becomes really difficult for a lot of people that are learning to set up takedowns is not telegraphing things and setting it up properly in a way that you can use combinations. What do you think are some really important keys to being creative and I guess not telegraphing things against your opponent and catching them by surprise more frequently?
Yeah, so they talk in like the mind and business. They talk about like fixed mindset, growth mindset, learning mindset, all these different mindsets. And when you're training jujitsu, there's always sort of this like linear pathway to a success, right? Guy posts here, I grab the wrist, I go for an arm drag, I get back exposure, I shoot another leg, I take around his hip, I take him down, I put the hook in, seatbelt. It's like a very linear path, and you drill these things, and you kind of have this narrow-minded thing of like if this, if that, if this, that, then, right? And that kind of mentality makes it very difficult for the person to kind of get really good and break out of that. You may memorize all these different sequences, and because this is a jiu-jitsu based podcast, we kind of nerd out and be like, all right, let's look at De La Hiva. De La Hiva with the collar grip, you push the leg out, he bases, and then you kick him to the side and you bolo underneath, and then you could kick these linear pathways to these things, right? But at any given moment, you could kind of reverse that and then go into another position. Right? You don't have to go from De La Hiva into the leg base. You're pushing, you're weaving that leg over. Now you go, you kick him over, you go Ashigarami or single leg X, right? And then you're bumping him forward and trying to catch the ankle, and then all of a sudden they go to a knee, and now you're scooping under, and now you're going deep half. How do you develop sort of that sensitivity to be able to abandon a position and go into another position? And it's kind of this low risk thing of being able to flow in and out of ideas. And I think when you have this linear method of teaching and learning, you could only string together these linear pathways that are kind of like independently existing, and it takes a very smart person in the game for a very long time to be able to say like, okay, these lines, they can intersect here and go there. And now all of a sudden, we're trying to be like a engineer / scientist, and we're not really equipped for that. You know what I mean? Like we're freaking grapplers, for God's sake. So like having the mentality of just playing and exploring positions and going over here and putting your mind there, and then kind of having general ideas about positions, right? That's kind of the thing. Even like when I was teaching the no-gi stuff in the video for Fanatics, it's like not accepting wrist grips, controlling the hands. If he grabs my wrist, I'm not just trying to cut away. I'm trying to cut away and keep a wrist grip, right? And then looking at 2-on-1s, arm drag from the outside arm, inside arm, and as opposed to just dragging in it, closing the distance and hugging that arm. So it's an intermediary position between sort of the arm drag from wrist grip and then bringing the arm to the side. So now all of a sudden you kind of explore that, go in and out, and it's not like a clear path, but it's a general guide, like the North Star, so to speak. And I think that really leads to a lot of creativity. And then you kind of input your own game in that sense. I like single leg takedowns to this leg with the head on the inside. Okay, let's look at this framework of fighting for hands, fighting for position. How do you kind of gain head position? Don't let the guy touch the head. And you're playing this game, right, at 30% speed. And all of a sudden you start seeing openings. Person's going for your head, you're ducking it, and then there's a single leg maybe. Guy grabs your wrist. Okay, we don't want him tying up my wrist. Like clipping it, keeping it, head position, you're angling, you're looking for that leg, right? It's not there, I abandon it, but I'm still keeping the wrist. Things like that, So you're trying to have a basic infrastructure where you kind of pick and choose and throw in your own stuff, and I think that leads to new discoveries and having a creative mind, which is not so fixed and linear.
It's really important for people to hear this too, because I think that a lot of times when people first start pursuing the takedown game, whether they're going the judo style or wrestling style, one thing they run into is that they realize it's not that the destination, the trip is never A to B. It's always, there's always multiple setups, and the thing that you land is usually the result of a series of attempts that you've made at other things that cause reactions that lead you to the final destination. And one thing that helps, one thing that helps with that a lot too is the idea of using feints. How often do you throw feints and like fake attacks at people just to get the reaction? Is that a big part of your game?
All the time. I do more feints than actual attacks.
Cool,
I
cool.
go
Yeah.
whole matches with just feinting and hanging out and then shooting and pretending and shooting. And then, because all it takes, right, if you're doing a 3-minute roll with someone on their feet, one direct attack to take them down. So the whole time you're feinting, the whole time you're juking, blah, 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 blah. He thinks you're shooting, he thinks you're shooting an arm drag, and then you go for a single and you take him down. That's good. Now you're doing jiu-jitsu on the ground, right?
Yeah.
One shot, 10 feints, right? That's fine. There's like a ratio there. And I think a lot of beginners don't know how to properly feint. And they're just throwing direct attacks after direct attacks because the nomenclature of like, hey, he has great technique. What is the technique? Oh, butterfly sweep is like this, and the technique goes like that, and all the nuances of this and that, you know? So, yeah, man, I'm a big fan of the feints, developing that in an explicit way. It's got to be a part of everyone's training, I think.
To piggyback off that, I think another thing important about feints is understanding what it is you're looking for. Like
Yeah.
what is the actual response? Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes people, as you're getting moving along and understanding how to use feints, or you start implementing them in your game, you get the reactions, but sometimes you don't quite know what to do with them. What are some of your favorite things to feint for, and what reactions? Like, what are some triggers that you're really looking for in your game personally when using feints?
So here's a great one that I like. It's a good example that kind of like exemplifies like the way I like to think about feints. So if you have my wrist grip, right, I'm going to go for an arm drag by the elbow joint to hyperextend the elbow quickly. So now there's always going to be, and I'm not trying to break your arm, because if you let go of the wrist, if you let go, like it'll just, right, you won't hurt your elbow. It's just like a quick jolt of the elbow. So once I go for that arm drag and try to bring the arm across and then look for that shot, I'm faking a shot there, right? So now all of a sudden there's two stimulus. That elbow shock on the arm drag, I'm low on the elbow, and then I'm going to try to shoot that shot. So there's two reactions that potentially happen. And the next time I go for this arm drag, when you have my wrist, you're going to bend your wrist to the opposite direction and pull the shoulder back, right? So as I go in, you pull the arm back and I pop it to the same direction. And now all of a sudden I could duck and shoot it on the leg. That's a great example of one thing that I might be able to do. And then when I get that arm drag and I feint for that single, and he's going to retract that leg, I shoot the single to the other leg. So that's something that's kind of like a predetermined pattern, right? It is linear, but there's two paths and then there's two options. So that's something that I kind of automatically do when someone grabs my wrist, as opposed to everybody knows when you grab a wrist, you grab it, take it off, and then re-grab the wrist. Now 2-on-1. So sometimes I'll do that, and then sometimes I'll go into the sequence, and those two sequences are automated for me. So I don't even have to think about it. If you grab my wrist, I'm going to do either of those things, right? And it's a cluster. I call it like a cluster, you know? So like that's an example of something that I don't even know if that's what you asked, but
No, it absolutely is. It's a perfect example.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. But it also emphasizes what you were saying earlier too, is that that's a really dynamic thing we're talking about. So like like trying to keep track of like you said, linear sequences that can come from things like that seems like it would be a really hard thing for most people to do. Impossible. That's why I assume drilling often, doing specific training often. To go back to what you were saying earlier, is the best way to develop that. You think?
Yeah, and then this cluster you could do, right? Grab my wrist. 1, take off 2. Grab my wrist. Arm drag, single, right? Grab my wrist. 1, take off, arm drag off of that, right? So now there's like 3 or 4 multiple things that you could do, and you're doing it really slowly, right? And then so you're asking now, because it's so reaction heavy, you need the cooperation of the uke. So when I go for the arm drag on the elbow off your wrist grip, it's like, how would you react? And then they'll say, and they'll do this almost always because they don't want the elbow getting hyperextended, right? So when that happens, can you do it slowly, please? Ready? I'm going to go for it. And then as he's reacting, you push in the opposite direction and you like pat the elbow up. So now you're doing it at a much reduced speed. And that's the key. When you're showing something, they try it really fast. And then the faster you go, the more you're going to naturally default to the shitty jiu-jitsu that you already have been doing. Same with me. If I'm trying to develop a new skill and I do it really fast, you know what I mean? I could learn from a tennis pro how to serve a tennis ball, but then if I try to hit it really hard, the thing is going to go in the opposite direction. I'm not going to be doing anything the guy is telling me to do because I have natural pattern formation from years of me hitting the tennis ball in the wrong way. I've actually never really played tennis,
Yeah.
But like, that's the kind of thing you got to like program yourself to like break these defaults by going really, really slowly first and having a cluster of attacks where you kind of drill just this specific thing. And now all of a sudden, when whenever someone grabs my wrist, I have a couple of things go to, right? And now you throw in an underhook there every now and then, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You go into other sort of clusters, right? Because I have a cluster off the opposite side underhook off of that. And then you're kind of always ahead because that cluster is automated also, right? If they back up because they don't like the underhook, I'm going to step and follow up with a foot sweep. And those few things alone, I could be doing that in my sleep with zero energy expenditure against someone that's like, uh, below purple belt with no wrestling experience. I could take those guys down, essentially at will with the system, and to be clear, I said no wrestling experience.
Yeah, right. Important detail, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of wrestling, you mentioned Justin Flores earlier, and I always point to both you and Justin when it comes to people who are very complete grapplers. You guys are both jiu-jitsu black belts, high level judoka, and really high level wrestlers as well. How important has it been to have that synergy of wrestling and judo together on the feet for your career and also for the way that you teach and the way that you see the art in general? Do you feel that adding wrestling with the jiu-jitsu with the judo has given you anything more than you would have had just being the accomplished judoka that you are?
Yeah, I think the number one merit that I got from wrestling is just the competitions period. I have over 200 wins in wrestling alone. And not to brag about it, but when you're wrestling a season, you're wrestling 40 matches back in the day. One season in high school, I wrestled 40 matches. So obviously it fluctuates, right? And then if you're wrestling 215, some of those are forfeits because all the team doesn't have heavyweights, and that kind of gets counted on your record. So I'm not saying I pinned everybody, but you have 30 to 40 matches in a season, and then you have to wrestle off season because that's the number one thing that they tell you when you're wrestling high school. If you're not wrestling off season, you're gonna suck in the in season. You're just gonna suck, right? So all of a sudden, it's like, all right, we're gonna go to this open, we're gonna go to this tournament, right? So you're doing these tournaments with your boys, and every time you go, you get 4 or 5 matches. And you do like 4 or 5 summer wrestling tournaments, you're getting 20, 30 matches in the off season, 30 to 40 matches in season. Now all of a sudden you're getting 50 to 70 matches a year. You're cutting weight, getting tough, you're doing it on top of your training. So the amount of concentration in the season, right? It's a 3-month season or 4-month season from like October to February or whatever it is. And having that volume of training during that time period, I think is invaluable. And I wrestled all throughout high school, all throughout college. So I wrestled 8 years straight like this, you know? And then so it's like having that time on the mat and just having the mentality. And sure, I've had some, great coaches. I've had some bad coaches. I've messed around and not really knowing how to learn and kind of like exposing myself to unnecessary risk. But just having the sheer volume of mat time, with wrestling, I think is the key. And being exposed to a rule set where you get punished for certain things and getting off bottom is a really, really important skill in collegiate wrestling. You get awarded a point for this. If you're on bottom and you get up, you get 1 point. You get out 1 point, right? It's a specific skill because if you're on bottom and if you stay on bottom, you're going to get turned. And there's also mat time, how long you're being held down there. There's a timer for that. And then the person gets points for this. I don't know if you follow collegiate wrestling.
I do, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So now all of a sudden, getting off bottom, getting out is a crucial part of the winning strategy. So you have to have that skill, right? And knowing like, all right, if this guy's behind me, has my back, like I could get up to my feet, and having the confidence is huge in the training room because you make a mistake, the guy takes your back, right? You're in trouble. But if the guy takes your back and you could get down, belly down, you could build your base, you could stand up, you could fight, right? And then, you could get to your feet and escape. So having that confidence is really, really important in training. It's important if you're competing in jiu-jitsu or judo, and just being a well-rounded grappler. If you find another wrestler or something like this, you have the mat time to be able to combat and know what they know. So if they want to play a wrestling heavy game, you're game, right? Because you have the advantage of that plus the rule set that's different that favors you. So it's really, the mind was just, it's so good for the mind to have gone through high school and college wrestling. It's really like a gem, really, for me. I loved having gone through that. I loved being exposed to the high level wrestlers. I wasn't like all American or anything like that in college. I was messing around and doing more judo than anything. But being exposed to high level D1 guys, all Americans. I wrestled Chris Weidman at the New York
Yeah.
State, championships in college,
Yeah.
so awesome experience. Awesome experience.
That's incredible. I love that answer, man. I love that you talked more about the mindset and the benefits and competitiveness that you've gotten from wrestling rather than just the
Yeah.
technical stuff, because that is huge. And what you mentioned too is something that's so valuable with wrestling is that unlike jujitsu, like with jujitsu, in order to get competition hours, you have to go to tournaments as often as
Yeah.
possible, and
Yeah.
that's very different than when you're an adult who has a job and you can go to maybe
Yes.
a tournament every other month or something versus
And
a kid that's in
150
school.
bucks a shot.
Yeah,
And
versus a kid that's
hotel
in,
and flight.
yeah, and hotel and all that, and versus a kid who's in school and it's like, hey man, this year you're going to end up doing 50 to 70 matches. And if we're talking about a kid in middle school or even younger who starts in like the junior little peewee groups and stuff, man, by the time you're in high school, you've had hundreds and hundreds of matches. It's just so then by the time you get into jujitsu, it's just like, okay, this is just like an open mat for me. Like any tournament's just going to feel like an open mat to you.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get nervous. Most people, if you're not getting nervous at all, you're a little bit of a sociopath. Because the guy's trying to rip your head up, right? Something's not quite right. But just
it's like, what's that guy's last name? Dahmer. I mean, you pull this guy named Dahmer.
Yeah, crazy guy. Yeah, but no, yeah, man. I mean, you just got to show up. High school wrestling is like the bus is there. You get on the bus and the teams are already there. It's a dual meet tournament. It's a tournament on Saturday. You get on the bus, you show up. There's bagels that the coach provides. There's bars. There's no money involved. You don't have to pay. You just show up, hang out with your boys, and just go out there and wrestle. And then the next day, it's like, oh, I didn't do too good. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a lift. You have no responsibilities whatsoever but that. And, maybe a little bit of academics. You know what I mean? And then Monday, you get back in the room. And all right, guys, you guys suck. This was that. No one was able to finish a shot, off a single. That's what we're going to work on today. And everyone's working on it. And then, all right, make weight for Thursday. You have a dual meet on Thursday and you have a tournament on Saturday. What's your weight? You're on it? Okay. And you're going home watching, Iowa the season. And it's just like the concentration of just this focused study that you just can't do in jiu-jitsu as an adult because we have responsibilities and it costs money and time. And at the end of the day, 95% of jiu-jitsu guys are hobbyists.
Yeah.
It's a hobby, Judo too.
Yeah, I've actually got my son. We're coming back to the States for the holidays. I'm gonna put my kid. He'll be 3 at that time. He'll be 3 by the time we get to the U.S. again, and I'm gonna put him in a little kiddie camp. That's a wrestling camp that we have.
Are you East Coast or West Coast?
East Coast, Atlanta. Yeah.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there's a great wrestling coach in Georgia named Charlie Morris, and
okay. I know him. I know him.
Yeah,
Chuck.
Chuck. Yeah, Chuck. Exactly, Chuck. Yeah, exactly, Chuck.
He knows me from my wrestling days.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Dude. Yeah. So I'm taking my son Vinny to Chuck when he's 3 in December when we get there. And
huge program. Huge program.
Oh, it's massive. It's awesome.
They said they did like 300 kids there.
Yes. Yeah. He pumps out just so many kids through this program. And I'm really hoping my son loves it. Cause I don't want to like force my kid into the stuff that I like, but I really hope he takes to it. I think he will, cause he's a very roughhousey kind of kid. It's like his favorite thing to do. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But everything you described about wrestling is precisely how I want my kids to wrestle. So
yeah, it's the best. I mean, golf or tennis would be better because there's money at the end of the road, really. And it's a lot less, taxing on the body. And I'm always kind of like torn between these things. And, because there is a little bit of a monetary reward too at the end of the tunnel when it comes to some of these other sports, that is non-existent in grappling, I don't want to say non-existent. It is there. It's there, right? But there's no $10 million Nike deal. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's true. Maybe I'll transition him halfway. He'll be like a muscly kind of cauliflower-eared golfer. Well, by the time he's like 16, I'll transition him over and just, okay, all that other stuff was just for self-discipline and focus. Now we're going to actually make some money here.
Yeah, that's the right way.
Shintaro, what do you think are some like really underutilized judo techniques that you feel could be really effective in jiu-jitsu that you just don't really see used much?
Gi or no-gi we're talking about here?
Let's do both. Let's start with no-gi and then go to gi.
I think no-gi. Actually, let's do gi first. A lot easier. I think Tomonage is the most underutilized thing because every jiu-jitsu guy pulls guard, and we've spoken about this in depth, and no one does a deep dive Tomonage in jiu-jitsu because it's very difficult to distinguish between a guard pull and a Tomonage. And, everyone teaches, collar sleeve, right versus right, right hand on the collar, left hand on the sleeve. oh, you pull to the sleeve side so they can't reach down and grab your leg, but you see tons of good guys pulling to the lapel side all the freaking time. What's the difference? It's preference, right? Do people guys like kind of show it, feint it, and then pick and choose which direction? Not really. They have a guard pull that they like and they do it, whether it's that or diving for the collar and sitting, but it's a very easy leap to get good at tomoe-nage, right? And there's many different entries for tomoe-nage, just like the way there's many different variations for guard pulling as well. You're staggering the timing by faking a guard pull with the right leg and then guard pulling to the other side and going into a delahiva, right? There's a tomoe-nage right there, this exact same maneuver, And I don't think people try it because people are good at defending guard pulls. They posture up, they squat down, and now all of a sudden you're in this like headquarters sort of position, and both players get what they want, right? The person who's pulling guard went to the ground. Person on top didn't immediately get swept or taken down, and they're both happy with the result, right? But if you kind of just explore it a little bit more and tweak it a little bit more, the person on bottom can end up on top with a big overhead sweep immediately off the bat, which is tomoe-nage. Yeah. So I think that's one of the most underutilized skill that's not quite well explored in jiu-jitsu yet. In the gi.
It's also a great base to set up some sweet helicopter arm bars because if you're getting real comfortable with that, you hit some highlight stuff too if you get good at it.
Yes. And the no-gi, I'm gonna say like more foot sweeps off like chest to chest over under stuff. A lot of guys are doing the slide by foot sweep with the trailing leg. We call it a circle dayashi or a dayashi barai foot sweep off like a circling movement. Like sometimes it's off a sasai. I know I'm throwing a lot of Japanese terminology out there.
It's all good.
But the slide by foot sweep, when the weight gets unweighted from that back leg, that's become huge. Every person's hitting it,
Yes.
But now, like you saw Joseph Chen hitting the inside trip the other day. He was at my gym that same week, drilling upper body stuff because we're doing no-gi stuff. And he's in New York frequently now. So like he comes by, works on this stuff. And I think that's sort of going to be the new meta, because people are much more upright. And in freestyle wrestling, there's a lot more, throw and forget because it's just back exposure. And then with collegiate wrestling, they're much more bent at the waist. So there's a lot more shooting, right? In the setting of no-gi, where people tend to be upright, locking upper body high, upper body to upper body connection, attacking the feet, it's going to happen, right? Then we see it more and more, and you see it on the highlight reel, and it's still not developed yet because you see it in the context of guys just going for it and then sweeping somebody when everything is sweaty and slippery. But the key is when there's not slippage and when you're tactically moving and setting up positions by doing action reaction and timing these things off multiple maneuvers and feints, that's like the next level up, right, with the foot sweeps. And that's still kind of, you don't see it much in jiu-jitsu. You see it in judo all the time. Judo is known for foot sweeps and trips, right? So I think that's going to be sort of the next thing. But the different variations of it, right? Kochi, Kosoto, Ochi, Osoto, right? Dayashi Barai Sasai. There's 6 or 7 different foot sweep types that we kind of named just now. They're all different and they're all have their unique variations. So if you think of it this way in 2 or 3 different ways just to do the Kochi Gari, right? Now you have 21 different variations of how the foot is maneuvered or the shape of the technique, not even talking about setting up and feints and et cetera, et cetera. So you have 2 or 3 feints, 2 or 3 setups for each one of those. You have 100 something different combinations and permutations where you kind of maneuver the person and take down the person using just your feet, So that's, I think, is super underutilized. No one really kind of gets it yet. I shouldn't say that, but I think there's a lot more that the judo world has that they could give to the jiu-jitsu world. And, the foot stuff is, shameless plug. I have a video that's coming out. BJJ Fanatics stuff.
Do you agree with the idea that having basic judo skills puts someone at a significant advantage on the feet in modern jiu-jitsu? Or do you feel that the level of takedown skills in the sport's risen to a level where you need more than just the basics to have an advantage over your opponents?
I think the basics in judo has not changed. And 95% of the time you go into a gym and they kind of give you the traditional technique-based thing of like, okay, hand goes like this, elbow goes like that, chest to chest, arch your back, load them onto the hip. It's just not applicable at all. And what gets really misconstrued with the basics in Japan is, yes, you spend hours and hours doing basics, but you also spend hours and hours doing live. You're live rolling. So if you look at a high school Japanese judo practice, they're training 7 hours a day. Yes, they're doing 2 hours of just basic drilling, of like just the static stuff that you see fit-ins, but that's only 2 hours out of the 7 hour training. And I'm literally talking, they're training like 7 hours a day because they do the 6 a.m. training till like 7:30, right?
Wow.
And then training after school, 3 p.m. to like 8 p.m. They're doing that, you know? So like during that time period, okay, the first hour is just doing these stupid drills. You know what I mean? So now all the people who learned from Japanese guys were like, oh, you have to do 1,000 drills a day, 1,000 uchikomis a day, fit-ins. It doesn't apply in the context of you come on a Tuesday night class and the class is from 7 to 8 p.m. You know what I mean? Like it can't be that. It has to change and scale. Oh, so now what? You're only going to do 5 minutes of that stuff, and then now your static drills look like shit. It's like no wonder why your live sucks. And then it's like, where do you focus? And a lot of these guys have not made that jump into like teaching it in a contextual way. They're still teaching one technique at a time, which is just snapshots of these throws. And no one's going to know how to put these things together, you know? But if you're a good athlete with good athletic skill and you have a basic judo knowledge of the fundamentals, of course you're going to go out there against some random jiu-jitsu guy and do okay, as opposed to the guy who just came off the couch, right? But a lot of this stuff is dependent on athletic ability. So if you have a basic judo thing, you did judo for 6 months and you did randori live, right? With most gyms do. Now you have a foundation that most other, off the couch guys don't. So it may seem like there's an advantage, but I don't think there's much edge with like just drilling things statically the way the fundamentals have been taught. I think all that stuff needs to change. And even the Japanese are changing that. They're not doing these long drawn out warm ups where they're just, doing foot sweeps down the mat anymore. All right, pick a partner and start doing some light gripping, right? Then it's like all like practical stuff, you know. So of course they still do some of the right, but it's changing even in Japan. And I love the guys that are here. They're like, oh, in Japan, in Japan. It's like, first of all, you're not Japanese, and you learn from a Japanese guy that did judo in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's like none of this stuff applies anymore, bro. You know, not to like put down the old masters or the people who came through that system, but we all need to adapt. And my opinion is it may be unpopular. That stuff needs to change too. And I preach this stuff on my YouTube, so I think it's going towards the right direction where people are much more receptive to this idea.
Is there any primary group that you see making that transition, making that movement towards getting away from the traditional, outdated variations of teaching?
I see like snippets of this stuff on YouTube now, and I see guys who are doing drills that are very useful. Like 3-person drills where they're driving and then trying to finish in multiple angles with reactions and things with a third person kind of holding the person up. So you're working the second portion, third portion of the throw, or you're trying to learn how to run a foot sweep, the guy into the ground with support. So I think, but judo is not popular in the United States. And I've said this before, there's 50 million judo players in the world, 50 million judokas in the world, which is massive. Iran, number one sport there is wrestling. Judo doesn't even compare. I was talking to the Iranian delegate from international judo, and he was like, "Wow, it doesn't even compare. Everyone loves wrestling. Wrestling's the biggest thing there. Judo is so small." I was like, "How many
Wow.
people do you have registered in the country?" He goes, "We have 70,000 people registered for Iranian Judo Federation." I'm like, "Wow, U.S. is 10,000 or
I was going to say
12,000."
that's a lot. Yeah.
And you go to France, you got
Wow.
over 1 million. In Japan, there's 2 million. So now all of a sudden you're talking the scale, you know what I mean? And then so now when you're in the United States, you're really talking a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the judo world. And so it's invisible really here. So what you see in the United States is not an accurate depiction of what's, the new trend or what's going on globally. And there's no powerhouse gyms here. There's no 300-person judo gyms. They don't really exist. So hopefully one day we want to see more of that, and then see sort of the cutting edge, right, judokas coming out of the States. But we're seeing little bits of it. If you look at some of these channels, YouTubers, judo players from the United States on Instagram, little by little, we're seeing more of the cool stuff, leaking into the media. And, I got to tell you, man, we have jiu-jitsu to thank for that too, right? jiu-jitsu came from judo, and it was this thing. And now in the United States, jiu-jitsu blew up, and we're both having lift for each other, helping each other out. And I'm very grateful for BJJ.
I'm obviously a huge enthusiast of any style of grappling. I love
Yeah,
grappling in general.
yeah,
So it would make me sad to see one form of grappling just sort of die off or not be around as much
yeah,
anymore, because there's so much to add from everything,
yeah,
So I would love to see judo have a revival and become as popular as it is in other
yeah,
countries in the US, because it would only do everybody good. If we
yeah.
can all
Sure.
share technique and make these hybrid styles of grappling, I think it's incredible. So
And we're positioned really nicely because the LA Olympics are 4 years from now.
yeah.
And US Judo, I mean, we're sending what, 3 guys to the Olympics? One of them is a Cuban girl that like has a citizenship, so it's like 3 Olympic qualifiers this year. Like, that's not a lot. But because we're the host nation, every country, every category is already qualified. So we get to send the full team. So the US decides how we're going to decide that team. And you look at some of these heavyweight divisions, very, very, not contested in the national level. Some of these jiu-jitsu guys that are from the United States who are unbelievable can do judo for 2 or 3 years and pick up enough skill to be competitive. Not in the Olympics, but to make the Olympics for the U.S. So now all of a sudden that changes the game, because we have millions of grapplers in the U.S. who wrestle and do BJJ. Making a wrestling Olympic team, freaking from the United States, almost impossible.
Yeah.
Judo, when every category is qualified, right, and you're only competing against American judo players, jiu-jitsu guys have a shot. I'm not talking like every category. There's categories where they have no shot, but like just to make the team, and now you see a lot of guys, hybrid guys like me, Justin Flores, teaching and preaching this stuff, and guys who have been doing grappling from a young age that does all 3. I think we're positioned pretty nicely for a nice boost in judo in the United States.
That is really cool, dude. Yeah, that is a really neat opportunity for young, athletic, competitive people that are already doing grappling through jiu-jitsu or wrestling
Yeah,
to
yeah,
cross over. That's really cool, man. That's really cool.
yeah. I think so.
We'll see how that plays out. Hopefully it plays out the way we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Shintaro, man, I'll tell you what, we've reached a point of the show. I always play a game with my guests. You've played this before. It's called the Pummel. It's a series of random questions. Some of them are about jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But Shintaro, I'd love to play this with you again, man.
Sure. Yeah, love to.
All right. I've added a couple new questions since you've been on. Question 1, what's the largest animal you think you could beat in hand-to-hand combat?
Ooh, largest animal. Oh, man, like a kangaroo maybe?
Okay, yeah.
You ever see that guy punch the kangaroo?
Yeah.
I think I can take a kangaroo, man. I can take it down.
The guy that punched the kangaroo that I saw, that kangaroo didn't wobble for a moment. It took the shot completely and then just stood there and stared at him. It didn't keep attacking him, so it did kind of calm him down or whatever. But knocking out a kangaroo looks like it would be kind of hard. So
although I do think if it's just like straight large, like of course a giraffe kicks you in the head, you're dead. But like I feel like those thin legs, you tackle them properly in the front legs, then maybe you can kind of take them down. Maybe a camel. Maybe a camel.
You'd be like the Star Wars ship that wrapped the legs in that big walking thing. I just saw a video the other day of a guy, I think this was in India, that got killed by an elephant. Did you see that video that's floating around the internet?
No, I didn't see it.
Dude, so it was one of those real sad situations where the guy's smacking the elephant to make it do whatever it's trying to do. And all of a sudden this thing just like, it pins him and then just steps on his hips. And the dude like just is like, he's like cookie dough. He's just smashed. And then he gets to do it. Oh, it's terrible. So I was thinking like, I think any animal of that size, I don't think would make the list here on the Pummel. But
physicality is a real thing, man.
It really is. Yeah.
Physical limitations.
If you found a genie lamp and you could get 3 wishes, normal genie rules apply, so no killing anybody and no wishing for more wishes. What would be your 3 wishes?
I don't know. I think happiness for my daughter. That's the number one thing.
Awesome.
I'm a daughter obsessed. I love her so much, and we're gonna go to the pool after this, and just happiness for her, really. I think that's the number one thing. And 2 more wishes. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, like I want to say like make money, but like because we're in such like a tough environment to make money, really, right? But I don't know, man. Just happiness for my daughter and family's health. I think those are my 2 number ones, man. Just I want my family to be healthy, and I told you I had a stroke thing a couple years ago.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah.
yeah. So like,
Things all in the clear now for after
yeah,
that.
I'm all in the
Yeah,
clear. Yeah, but there's deficits. Like hand stuff. I was trying to write my cousin like a handwritten note for his wedding. Because he just got married. But it's like I can't. My handwriting is so bad. Like, and I'm trying so hard to like make it look like he could read it because he wants to read it on his honeymoon with his freaking wife.
yeah.
But like, I just physically had such a hard time writing this thing, and it's like, oh man, it's like such a pain in the butt. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So like, I don't want to go through that again. I don't want my family to have to go through something like that. Something bad for happening to them. So just like the health and wellness of my family is just really all that I wish. And as long as I can do privates and stuff and teach judo, I could make enough money to survive. So
Yeah.
money would be nice, but it's not my number one thing. And doing these podcasts and thinking about martial arts and being engaged and passionate about something, I'm already doing that. So it's nothing. I don't have to wish for that, right?
Let me ask you this: with your with your hand coordinate, with your hand motor skills and stuff that you felt
Yeah,
an effect from the stroke, has that impacted your judo or your training
yeah,
or your
for
jiu-jitsu?
sure. So my collar grip. So they have the hand squeezing things that you could measure how hand strength.
Yeah, the little spring
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like my left hand, like it's pretty strong, even though I was right hand dominant. My right hand's probably like 40% weaker, which is pretty significant.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
like grabbing onto the collar, whenever they want to break the grip, if they get their hands on my hand, they'll break the grip. So now, like when I grab the collar, when they go for it, I don't let them put their hand on the grip. I disconnect the hand, or like I go like this and not let them put the two hands on. And when they go to break the grip, I don't hold on to it anymore. I'll break it myself, and then I'll cut it away as opposed to like trying to keep it and then fight for the grip. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I'll fight
Yeah.
for the grip, but it's sort of like I'm not trying to keep the grip anymore, if that makes any sense. You
Sure.
know?
Sure. Yeah.
But that's, I've gotten used to it. Like I don't even realize it when I'm training. So it's really great.
That's one of the great things about jujitsu is that it's one of those activities you can do where even if you have some ailment you're working around or some
Yeah.
limitation you're trying to work around, there's options. Like
Yeah.
if you had I don't know, like if you were a pitcher in baseball and your rotator cuff is just completely destroyed and you can't use it anymore, like
Yeah.
that's kind of a wrap. There's no way to like angle your shoulder or use leverage in a way to pitch
Yeah.
a baseball. But with
Yeah.
jujitsu you can, and
Yeah.
I've got one myself. I've got this thing called hallux limitus or hallux rigidus,
Okay.
whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. It's basically arthritis in the big toe joints, and I have it in both toes.
Oh
So
boy.
I
Yeah.
can no longer bend my toe at 90 degrees
Yeah.
anymore. It kind of
Yeah.
gets stuck about right here. And
Yeah.
that's obviously really screwed me up with my wrestling because
Yeah. It's
everything
not
I did.
gout.
No, it's
No.
not. I
Yeah.
wish it was just that. It's this arthritic thing. That they've
I
diagnosed
have
me with.
a
So
ankle fused bone on my right ankle, and I
do you
can't.
really?
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
very limiting. It's brutal,
It
but you
sucks.
can work
Yeah.
around. Nick Newell?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should interview him. He's awesome. He's a friend of mine. He has that one arm. He has a stub, but he's an MMA
Yeah.
fighter, and he uses that to his advantage. He grinds it into your neck. He
Yeah.
punches you with it. He chokes you with it. It's really unbelievable how this one-armed guy like had so much success in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and MMA.
Yeah.
One arm.
It's incredible.
Fought Justin Gaethje, like amazing guy. So it's like those limitations, man. It's like you only have limitations that you really put on yourself, really. To a
Absolutely.
certain extent. If you're paraplegic, you can't grapple as much. But like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Even with people who have serious limitations, there's still ways. I mean,
Yeah.
you can find a way. So thank God we do this and not something that would be, completely like a wrap if you had some kind of limitation like
yeah,
that. So,
yeah.
what do you think is the worst job you ever had in your life?
Worst job I've ever had in my life. I don't know, man. I did pharmaceutical sales for a little bit, like as like a drug rep, and I was like a young kid, like right out of trying to make an Olympic team. It's like 2012, and at first it was really cool. They give you the corporate car, they give you the corporate card. You're whining and dining doctors, and you're wearing a suit all day. But after about like 6 months, man, it was like the most soul sucking thing ever. You know what I mean?
Really?
It's just it was like kind of like, oh my god, what am I doing this shit for? Like what is the point of this? And money was pretty good at the time. I was a kid. Right? How old was I? 2012, 12 years ago. Yeah, like late 20s or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, just soul sucking, just this corporate gig of like no one really gives a shit about you. Your boss cares about you because of the numbers that you're putting up. My sales was pretty good one year, and it was like eighth in the country or something like that. That quarter, and I was a star. And then it started declining a little bit. And now I'm an asshole. And it's like you're so replaceable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like there's nothing that you're just kind of like living this like everybody's kind of in the same boat sort of a situation, and you obligated to be there. You're not passionate about the product you're selling. You don't give a
Yeah.
shit about the people you're selling to. It was really like a soul crushing experience. I did it for like a year and a half, and then for after that, I sold REITs for a friend, and calling investors, hey, if you don't have this business opportunity, making these cold calls, and don't call again. And it's just like, at least that was good because my friend's company, I was helping him out. I felt like I was helping him out. But man, like, yeah, working that corporate, is brutal.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Did not like it at all. Not like it at all.
Sales in particular is rough. It's really hard. I sold cars for like 3 months, and I just
Yeah.
every day I had to come home and feel like I needed to take like two showers just to not
Yeah.
feel so grimy, like I just I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, oh, you're a piece of shit.
But dude, it's a skill that everyone should have at some point, have experience doing, I think, right? It's like,
yeah,
you want this, you need this, why, right? And to communicate something that can potentially help them in air quotes. Great experience. But yeah, man, selling cars, yeah, you're better off doing what you're doing now.
Yeah. It's better, like you said, if you're selling something you truly believe in and that you're passionate about, that's totally different. But if you're selling cars, if you're selling pharmaceutical drugs, if it's stuff that you just don't, that you're not personally passionate about, it's totally different.
Dude, I was in the women's division selling to gynecologists, so I was selling vaginal cream to women doctors, dude. Yeah, dude,
that's amazing.
It was awful, dude. It was awful. But selling gi pants with pockets, that's a pleasure. I love it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Did you ever see the movie Glengarry Glen Ross?
Yes. Yeah. So all the sales stuff.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
ABC, right? That's a great scene.
Yes. Always be closing.
Room, that's another one.
Yeah. It's like, no, you don't get these leads. These leads are for winners. If you guys have, for the listeners, if you haven't seen Glengarry Glen Ross, it's a classic movie. You got to watch it. That'll give you kind of the idea of the life of a salesperson. It's very, it can be very cutthroat and very stressful. Yeah. What do you think is a secret talent that you have that people might not know about?
Secret talent that I have. Oh man, that's a tough one. I don't even know if I have any secret talents. I'm so transparent and open about everything.
What's your biggest talent outside of martial arts?
Outside of martial arts, man, I don't know. I'm a good sprinter. I'm pretty fast on my feet. Nice. Not like a track and field level guy, but majority of the times where I line up and do sprints, I'm always sort of at the top of the heat. But it's not that exceptional. I feel like it's not like I'm blowing everyone away. It's not really like that. I don't know, man. What else am I good at? I like my friends used to always say like Higashi's always down to bullshit and hang out, and I was like the down to hang out kind of guy. That was a skill I think that I'm always down to go out and hang. Not anymore. I have a kid and I'm too busy for that. But I think that's a good skill to have when you're in your 20s.
For sure.
Call me up for anything. I'm out. Let's do it.
Very sociable.
Out, Yeah,
that's great, dude. I like that. What do you think is something you wish you could be really good at? Something you wish you could be better at that you're not currently good at?
Like higher order, like systematical engineering, like kind of doing all the tedious, meticulous stuff and being super organized. I strive for it. I want to be that. And I watch a lot of like self-help productivity, like this is how I organize my life in an Excel spreadsheet, that kind of stuff. But I could never be that. And I wish I could be that because I know that if I were able to do that and fill in the weaknesses that I have, I'll be in a much better place, financially, business wise. But like it's really not my strong suit. And I want to be better at it. I work at it. I do. But I wish that's one skill that I wish I had, man. Like some people just kind of have it.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those guys. Yeah.
You're in good company. Neither am I. I feel that with my soul, man. 100%.
I mean, how many guys ask you for private lessons and things like this that you think you remember that guy's name? You should have a list of guys, right? You should have a segment, market segment in your email campaigns thing. These are all the guys I've ever done private lessons with. You probably have hundreds on that list, and you just hit them up anytime you want to fill a slot.
Yeah.
I'm not that organized. Like, I don't even remember the guys that I have done lessons with the majority of the time, you know?
Yeah.
And I wish
Yeah.
I could kind of be organized and reach out to people like that. And hey, remember that time and this and that, you know? But, you know, we all do our very best. You know? So,
that's true. That's true. That's one of mine. I think we're just remembering people's names. I'm one of those guys that like if I meet someone, if you don't say your name like 3 times within the first 5 minutes we're hanging out, I won't remember your name. I feel like such an asshole too, but
no, but we're in the game of like seeing hundreds of people coming in and out of the gym, and right. You train all the time, and new guys, open mat guys. Hey, we trained that one time at this gym. It's like, yeah.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, bro.
Yeah. I think you submitted my brother. I'm like, yeah, that rings a bell, you know. Like.
That's great. What do you think is your favorite bad food to eat?
It's easy, man. Pizza, ice cream, burgers, you name it. If it's not good for me, I love it. You know, I eat pizza all the time, like all the time.
What's your favorite pizza?
Just like regular plain.
Yeah, a cheese pizza. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm a New Yorker, so it's like I have my go-to spots. You know, Mama's Two's down the street, selling Carmine's down the street. That's been around for 80 years. So like, just love pizza, love ice cream, love burgers, like all the stuff. You know.
What borough has the best pizza in New York, in your opinion?
Manhattan.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool.
I mean,
I hear
Brooklyn,
a lot of people,
you know,
that's what I hear. Yeah.
But they say
Everyone
New
says
Haven
Brooklyn.
pizza is another one that's new.
That's what I've heard. I've heard New Haven's supposed to be really good. Yeah.
I've taken a trip out there just to eat pizza, you know.
How was it? How'd it compare?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
But you know, the white clam is a little bit overrated, I think. But like the regular margarita at some of these, like it's thin, crispy, you know, brick oven thing. Great. Phenomenal.
Dude, the best pizza that I think I've ever had in my life in the U.S. was in Boston. It is in Boston's North End, the Italian neighborhood. Place called Regina's, and we got this thing, and I can't remember what it was. We had like pepperoni, and it had a artichoke on it, and it had it was incredible. But it's the original Regina's on the North End of Boston. If you ever get a chance,
pizza's like the perfect food. You know?
Oh, it's awesome! It's great. It's great. It's great.
Great. I might get some today, actually.
Yeah, I know. I might break my diet. I might break my macros and do the same thing, actually. Yeah. What do you think is your most hated food? What's something you cannot eat no matter what?
I don't like shiitake mushrooms. That's my go-to. I don't like it. You know, I don't know what it is about it. I just don't enjoy it at all. Shiitake mushrooms. I want to think of something that I don't like that most people like, but I can't think of any.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. What about what do you think is your biggest phobia?
Phobia. I mean, I hate roaches and rats and vermin. You know, I'm like grossed out by that stuff. So like, you know, messy girlfriend with messy apartment with food and roaches, like I just can't deal with that. You know, like I hate cockroaches. You know, I love being like outdoors and like I love being, you know, the idea of being a mountain man, but like, man, like I really don't like insects at all. Like, you like insects?
No, I don't. I'm not a fan of insects.
No, what about like bees and stuff? Like I'm like, oh, bro, you know, I'm like always peak alert.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by some insects, like if you ever watch like praying mantises. Like,
I love it,
bro. Maybe one of the coolest. Thank God those things are only about this big, because dude, if they were like this, imagine if they were like the size of even like a large dog. Like how screwed we'd be. Dude, you'd be in so much trouble.
Leg, dude.
You'd be done. They just get you in there. They lock you in and just start eating your face. I said praying mantises are cool. There's insects
at a distance. I'll watch like hornets do whatever it is, like the swarm of this and that crazy stuff on YouTube, you know. But like being near these things, I don't want to be anywhere near these things.
I'm not a fan of like your general pet, like mosquitoes, roaches. I'm not into that.
Worse, man. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a phobia, but yeah, it is that. And then like my kid getting in a car accident, of course, that stuff is I'm a super like paranoid about that stuff, because car accidents are so dangerous and common. You know, like it's like every day. You know, you walk down the street, you get hit by a car jumps a thing. I got rear-ended one time, like out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere. Like I was in the car with my friend. It's like a year ago. It's like, oh, stoplight pulled up. like waiting at the stop line. The guy just fucking slams into me from the back. It's like nothing you could do about it, you know?
Jeez, that
Yeah.
sucks. Yeah, there's really nowhere to go. Yeah, there's nowhere
Oh,
to go. And then
yeah.
like with people texting and driving and stuff, it's even worse now than it used to be
Yeah,
in the
that's how this
past, I
guy.
think.
That's what he was doing.
He was
He wasn't
texting.
directly
Yeah.
behind me. There was another car in between us, and he slammed into the lady behind me, who slammed into my car, and I
Oh,
slammed
okay.
into the car in front of me.
Oh,
So it was a pretty big thing, but there was nothing we could have done about it because we were
yeah.
in between two cars at a stoplight, and this guy's speeding. He's texting. He doesn't see that we're stopped, and just nothing you can do about it. You know,
Yeah.
I could have hurt
Yeah.
my neck if my kid was in there. It would have messed up. You know, it's like, so that's one of my. That's probably my biggest fear.
That's I think when you become a parent, that gets like escalated too. Like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it gets heightened even more for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. Well, who do you think is your favorite superhero?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't really watch too many of the superhero movies.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I have one really.
Don't have one. Well, here's a good follow up then. If you could have a superpower, what superpower would you want to have?
Oh my god, that's a tough one. You know, if you say super strength, it's cheating. You know, because then why would you even grapple? Because you could just,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it's just then grappling becomes fun. I lose a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, what if you had like moderate strength to where you get your 40% right hand back to 100, or maybe amp it up to 120, so it's a little stronger than it used to be. That
I mean,
seems
I've always wanted
reasonable.
to deadlift 600 pounds. That was my goal. You know,
There
I
you
got
go.
up to
Yeah.
565, so maybe that's a super strength thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess if I was a little bit, you know, stronger, it's always nice to be. But you know, you can kind of achieve that with the right PDs. You know, so it's
Yeah.
like yeah, we don't even have
those
to
super
ask. Like, yeah,
those superpowers exist in the dark corners of some gyms
they
for
really
sure. Yeah.
do. Yeah, even legitimately now. You know, it's a wild
Oh
world.
man.
Yeah.
Who do you think is your favorite MMA fighter of all time?
Oh, that's a tough one too, man. MMA fighter. Wow, that's I never even thought of that actually. I mean, growing up, I watched Mike Tyson, and that was just kind of a spectacular thing. I did like Khabib, and I love how he comes from that Dagestani region. Most people don't
Yeah.
know that's on the other side of Georgia, the country, and it's separated by the mountainous ranges. You know, the Caucasus Mountains or
The
whatever it
Caucasus
is. And
Mountains. Yeah.
yeah, and then you know, there's the native wrestling style, Chidaoba from Georgian wrestling. You know, and they wrestle in the mountains, and then these guys from the capital, from Dagestan and Georgia, go there and see these like young kids wrestling. And okay, you come to the capital now, and they pick these kids out of there, out of the mountains, like mountain wrestlers, and they put them in these camps in judo and wrestling and stuff like that. And then so I love the fact that Khabib comes from that kind of a background, you know, and then Dagestan's Russia, you know.
Yeah. Right.
And then, but it's not like it's in a corner of Russia where it's Georgian-ish. You know, it's like right by that Georgian area. And you know, Georgian judo is a huge, huge, huge thing. I was just over there for a
Yeah.
judo tournament, and man, they're little kids like waving at me like, yo, you that YouTube guy? You know, like it's crazy
cool.
the level of celebrity that these guys have over there, and everybody in the country watches it. You know, and even like Tushishvili is like a contender for the Olympics as a heavyweight. So now, like all eyes on that guy. So yeah, I like people from that region who are so great at this thing, and you know, so maybe Khabib. I think he's one of my favorites. You know,
Do you
yeah.
use the Georgian grip a lot when you're playing judo? Is that something
No,
you
not
play
so
with? No,
much.
not so
Yeah, yeah.
much. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
how to get out of it. You know, I don't like it that much. You know, being in there with a Georgian, but
Yeah.
I've explored it. Yeah, I can play
That's
it.
cool.
I can definitely play it, but it's not my best position.
Yeah, it really is cool. And like when you see different parts of the world that have a regional style like you're describing, it's did you know Lavelle Marshall? Did you know him?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he moved out to Mongolia to start
yes.
exploring the Mongolian wrestling stuff. And I don't think he ever came back. I think he's still there.
His
Yeah, but it's
girlfriend used to come to my judo gym.
oh cool, nice,
Yeah.
nice.
And then I used
Yeah,
to
but
get
it's
her, try to get her to bring Lavelle all the time. Hey, come and get him to do judo, get him to do judo. He never
yeah,
came, but like he was really into the Chinese wrestling.
yeah.
So he, you know, went over there for that. And then the Mongolian wrestling is really cool too, man. One day I would love to kind of try it, but you know.
I was watching a thing when he first went out. I think he did a tournament where like the prize was a goat, like you win a goat, and it's like a big deal. It's like this big deal to win one. I can't remember if he won one or not, but he's done pretty well over there. Like when you see the training videos and stuff. But it's cool seeing like a style that only exists in one part of the world, and you don't really see it much outside there, like you're describing. With
that's why they have so much success in judo, wrestling, and then sumo.
Yeah.
I love it. You know.
Final question for the Pummel game, Shintaro. If a zombie apocalypse breaks out right now in New York City, what's the first thing you do?
Honestly, take my kid and family and go up to my mountain house, and then hopefully purchase a gun or a shotgun on the way up there, because
Nice.
right, you gotta have your team. I guess I gotta like text my survival friends, and we have some like dry food up in the attic and stuff. Collect it, throw it in the van. Drive up there. I think probably better off being in the mountains, right?
Are you in the city? Are you in are you in Manhattan or no?
I have a place in Manhattan. I live most of the time in Westchester, which is about 30 minutes north of Manhattan.
Oh, cool.
That's
Okay.
where I live with my family and stuff. My kid, my family, my mom, my dad. We all live together. Single father situation. So like they help out my parents. It's the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great, dude.
I'm at that age, right, where you're 39, where you don't live with your parents, but your parents live with you.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's like this, like, oh, the grandparents to watch my child when I can't get childcare, but like I live with my parents.
That's awesome. That is cool though. That is cool.
Oh, it's the best.
I was gonna say if you're in the city, having access to a helicopter would be like if you had a helipad of some way for a zombie apocalypse, that would be a good option. But if you're in Westchester, you're already halfway out towards the country anyway, though. So you're not too far from.
I think my apartment in the city would be done, because it's like a small studio apartment. There's so many people in the thing. People will be infected. There's one set of stairs. It's on the 15th floor. It's like you're done.
Oh yeah.
It's over.
There's no way. There's no way. Yeah. You don't want to be in a big congested city.
Yeah.
Well, Shintaro, that was the final question for the Pummel game. Congratulations, you win yet again, and you got your double underhooks.
Thank you very much, man.
Of course, man. So here, let me ask you this. On the topic, we've obviously been talking a lot about using judo for jiu-jitsu, and you've said in the past that you don't like to advise people on using turning throws in BJJ. I assume that's due to risk of back exposure. Is that the main idea?
Yes. I think there's a lot of other skills to develop first. Then, of course, like if you're down in points, there's this time left, right? Time issue left, and you have to go for something big. You have to go for it. So you definitely want to go for it. There's a time and a place for it, but I don't think it should be your first line of thing. I think you should double down on foot sweeps, ashiwaza, inside trips, outside trips, over unders, 2-on-1 stuff, fireman's carries, and things like this, like from old school judo. I think that should take priority. And yes, have a couple of turn throws like uchimata, right? But doing it from safer positions like 2-on-1s, underhooks, as opposed to like the traditional kalatai turn throws, So yes and no. I think it's a big part of throwing, going for those big turn throws. But you can't do it in the traditional way of just a collar and a wrist. You just can't do it.
What are your thoughts on working off of failed takedowns? Like say you went for like a tomonagi and it failed and you ended up on bottom position now. Yeah. Is that the kind of thing that you encourage students to drill instinctively to be instinctively prepared for? Is that like a specific training you focus on ever?
Yeah. So going for tomonagi and then transitioning to juji is a skill that's very important in judo, because transition newaza is a big piece of it. And some people specialize in it. And I would say maybe like 5% of the global judo population who were competitors focus on transition newaza, right? Which is like going for tomonage, going for a kanto choke, going for tomonage, going for a juji, or like even the choi bar. That's the thing that like you go tomonage, yoko tomonage to the side of the right side. You go for the kanto choke, it fails. You loop the leg over and go for a choi bar. Like there's guys who do that in judo very proficiently, and that's off a failed attack. So it is definitely important. People should drill it, whether you should focus on it or not. If it's part of the game and your goal is to win in competition, 100%, I think you should focus on it. But a lot of guys are just kind of there for wellness and all around, well-rounded grappling. It might not be something that I designed my entire curriculum around.
What do you think is the hardest concept for most students new to judo when they first begin exploring judo? What do you think is the hardest concept for most new students when they're learning the low risk techniques that you're describing?
I think learning how to do it slowly at low intensity and understanding like skill acquisition, because everyone has something to prove. They want to be the guy that shows like, hey, look how talented I am at this thing that, I'm just figuring this thing out I should have been doing this. I'm really good at it. Watch me, focus on me. Because everyone wants to be different, right? Everyone wants to be significant in a way. And they want to feel like they have this innate talent that if they decide to bring it to the highest levels. So it definitely becomes an ego thing in the beginning. If I walk into this gym as a beginner, never done sports at all, but if I could beat all the best guys who are the best athletes, I have this innate thing and I want to make it my thing. And they're always hopeful for that. So kind of like not like giving them a reality check, like no, your mom's not an athlete, your dad's not an athlete, you're not an athlete. Not like giving them a full blown reality check, but kind of take their mind off like, hey, something to prove. Hey, I got to do this for myself. Hey, this is a talent oriented thing. No, you're trying to develop a skill and be valuable to the room so that every single person is also valuable to you. And we have this sort of this learning environment. And I think that's a really tough concept for most people to kind of get. And a lot of this stuff sort of is embedded in the culture in an unspoken way. But you have guys who can't read the room, who are just kind of like socially weird, who just don't get it. We had a new guy like going with like a woman that's 50 pounds lighter, and he's freaking going berserk shaking her, and it's like, dude, like it's ridiculous to us, but for him, I'm trying to understand his perspective. He's just like weird big guy. He's like doesn't want to get taken down by a lady, and there's just like this really something happening there. So it's like kind of understanding that and then trying to like talk him off of that and trying to get the other thing, that's a work in progress. So I think most people have a little bit of that, and it's all on a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the hardest concept for most people to grasp when they're grappling, whether it's judo or jiu-jitsu. I think it's the same.
What advice would you give to a jiu-jitsu student, let's say an advanced jiu-jitsu student that's reached a pretty decent skill level in jiu-jitsu, who's coming in as a fresh white belt in judo? I know a lot of times people might have this, this mindset of like, well, I already should be ahead of most of the class, and that might not be the case. That might not be the case when they start doing a new style.
Yeah, I think talking to the instructor and having a good instructor that understands both worlds is the key. Because if you're in there doing break falls for the first 3 months and then doing turn throws for the next 3 months, you're gonna get discouraged and quit. You're gonna try to like think, how is this gonna apply to my thing at all? And it's not gonna apply to your thing at all, right? With the different rule sets, and then you're gonna get frustrated because you learn some turn throws, you grab someone, they pull guard, and you're like, why bother, right? So like having like an open communication with a good teacher who understands both worlds, I think is the key. I think you have to understand like your training can't be judo person doing judo training. It has to be catered to you, differentiated for your goals and how you already operate in the training room and what your skills already are. So all those things really come from understanding yourself and then understanding the person who's trying to teach that skill to you. So that would be my advice. Have an open line of communication with the guy in front of the room.
Speaking of great instructors, Shintaro has several instructionals with us here at BJJFanatics.com. One of them is what we were discussing earlier, low-risk judo throws for BJJ. It's a great place to start if you guys are looking to add judo into your jiu-jitsu game. Shintaro is one of the best instructors in the world, so you'll see why if you check out his instructionals. He's also got two new ones he filmed with us. They're both no-gi judo instructionals. So for all you no-gi guys out there that want to start adding judo concepts into your game, that's a great place to start. These are all available at BJJFanatics.com. Shintaro, man, in closing, what are some of your major goals for 2024? What are some things you hope to accomplish by the end of the year?
I want to get the Higashi brand going a little bit more, right? I have like sort of like number goals and selling units and things like that, and kind of having a portfolio of products that's helpful for the community. And, I kind of want to grow that. That's one of my number one goals. I always have student-based goals at the gym. These guys do well at this competition. A number of student goals. I want to get back to 200 students again at my Upper West Side gym. So I have goals like that, and, I kind of have like these intangible ones of like, hey, I want to be doing this for my kid or that for my kid or spend more time with the kid. But I already kind of meet a lot of those. So it's not really like, oh, I got to spend, more time with my kid. But just focusing on making it meaningful and just being a little bit more present and, holding off on like the tech stuff for giving my kid iPad, this and that, and maybe cutting our YouTube time a little bit, Peppa Pig and all that stuff. Those are some of my personal goals, but yeah, I'm always working towards it, man.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Shintaro, it's always a pleasure getting to pick your brain and talk with you, man. You always bring such great insight to the table, and I really appreciate you providing such great insight on applying judo for jiu-jitsu, because as we said, the takedown game is a really, really important facet of grappling. Anyone that competes is going to start on the feet. You're not going to start tournaments on your knees. And even for the people that don't compete, I think it's such an important aspect of grappling. I always compare it to like, if you're a grappler that doesn't know how to bring the fight to the ground, it's kind of like being a pilot that doesn't know how to take a plane off the runway. So it's very important, and you provided some really great technical insight today to help us get better at that. So you're welcome back anytime. I'd love to have you back in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course, of course. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Shintaro, it's really easy to do so. He's on Facebook. It's Shintaro Higashi. Make sure you guys follow him there. His Instagram is Judo Shintaro NYC. If you guys are ever traveling through New York City, make sure you drop into his school. He's got a phenomenal school, and make sure you guys follow him on Instagram because he posts a lot of great content there. Yep. Speaking of great content, he's got an awesome YouTube channel. It's Shintaro Higashi. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified when he adds new videos. He's also got higashibrand.com. This is his apparel line that he has. It's gi, shorts, and pants that have pockets for casual wear. So check those out. And then guys, if you're not able to make it up to New York and attend any of his classes or get private sessions with him, you can learn from him anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. We talked today in depth about three of his instructionals that he has coming out. Low risk judo throws for BJJ. And then he's got 2 No-Gi Judo instructionals as well that are going to be hitting the website very soon. So go to BJJFanatics.com and type his name in. Also, he does do seminars all over the place as well. So make sure you follow him on Instagram to find out when and where those will be. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.